Hi, my name is Justin, aka Ghost Reader, and today I am going to be doing my video for the book Dune as part of Duneuary. So Duneuary was an event where where a couple of us booktubers read the book Dune by Frank Herbert during the month of January, and we're each making a video with our thoughts on it. And so basically, I'm going to give a shout out since it's still the Strike Back a Videoathon, and that is actually day 11 today. I'll leave a link down to the creators of the Strike Back Videoathon, and my small booktuber shout outs today are actually for the 6 people that I read this along with, and that's Dane Reads, Quigley, PeachyFishyBooks, Silvia Kay, Blossom Points, and Mindy Books Journey. So go check them out. I'll leave a link down in the description below to their channels. So basically, Dune, I'm going to give you a plot. So basically, the story talks about a 15-year-old boy, Paul Atreides, and his family goes to take over this desert planet called Arrakis, where they have this rare spice called melange, I think it's called, and I think that's how you pronounce it. And the family that they're taking it from, the Harkonnens, don't like it, of course, because they're losing revenue, and the spice is like very, very expensive because it's how this organization called the Guild uses that spice to help navigate faster than like travel. And so they're losing this precious resource, so they decide to take out the Atreides household, and they almost succeed, but they miss Paul and his mother Jessica. So Paul and his mother Jessica retreat out to the desert because Arrakis is like this desert world where like water is very rare and very precious, and they escape out into the desert, and they live among the indigenous people called the Fremen. And as they're living among the Fremen, Paul, as he begins to eat this spice, he has these latent psychic abilities that the spice really enhances, and he becomes like this chosen one, the Messiah among the Fremen. And then he basically, after a couple of years of living in the desert, comes back and basically takes back what's rightfully his. So that's a general overview of the story. It is a lot more complicated than that, and the world here is a lot richer. I mean, you have like the emperor, the empire, and then you have like the nobility family. I mean, the world building in this is great. So there's the empire, there's the noble families, and they kind of check and balance each other. And then there's like the guild, who basically they control space travel. So if you aren't in good graces with the guild, they'll just hike up the prices so you can't move anything, transport food and stuff like that, people, troops. And then you have like these Fremen who, since they've been living in this really harsh environment on this planet, they are like some of the best fighters in the galaxy, and they can beat like the Emperor's best men, who are supposedly the best fighters in the galaxy. So it's a really interesting book. It's full of intrigue. It is as much a political thriller as a sci-fi story. So if you like political thrillers and sci-fi, this is something that you would definitely enjoy. Some of the things that this book talks about, and that was really interesting, was how an environment can influence culture. So on this planet, it's very, very dry. There's not a lot of water, so water has become a very precious commodity, to the point that crying for someone, at least among the Fremen out in the desert, is considered like the highest form of like respect. When people see Paul when he's among them and he cries for someone who's died, they're like all amazed and say that you have, like, you know, given water for the dead. And it's like, it's shocking for them, because for them water is like, you have to reclaim all that water. It is so precious. It's more precious than like anything else. And so their whole life revolves really like around water. And as coming from a planet where they have oceans and rain, and coming to this desert planet, Jessica slowly begins to Jessica, who is Paul's mother, begins to slowly assimilate into the Fremen style. And when she realized that she's sweating and she doesn't have like the special suit on properly that keeps in all your sweat and stuff, she says, oh, that's a waste of water. She begins to adopt their ways. They harvest like their dead bodies for their water. So this society basically is shaped by the terrible environment here on Arrakis. And also the author Frank Herbert was really interested in ecology. So there's also like this interplay in the relationship between the Fremen, the water, and these worms, these giant worms on the planet that create this spice. And you have like the Empire that's really exploiting this resource, this spice and stuff, but they don't really care much about the worms or anything, because actually the Empire doesn't really know how the spice is really made. They just know it's made on this planet. But like the Fremen, who have been here, and this ecologist who the Empire has sent out there, has discovered that the worms are actually making this spice. And this spice is actually the process by which the spice is made, and the worms and the connectedness between that can actually one day help this world become more than just a desert. So you really get to see a kind of interplay between like the ecology aspect of the book. Also, interesting thing was like the role that religion plays in this book. And there's this group called the Bene Gesserit, and basically they're trying to create like the super being by basic eugenics. So they picked like the best of these noble houses, and they try to get like the best genetic template together to create this super being, which Paul ends up fulfilling the requirements for. They don't know that for sure at the beginning, but he does. And they want to control him, control what this thing is. So they've been doing this for years, picking the best of each other to try to get this perfect being. And they've sent people out to these planets, spreading like their religion. And when like Jessica is there, she recognizes like tidbits of the religion that she's from. And basically they've done this so that if like they were ever, if one of their own, the Bene Gesserits were out there on their own, and they came across these people, that the Bene Gesserit would recognize the religion and then be able to fulfill like these prophecies that they left there. So that's kind of helps Jessica and Paul when they're in dire straits. But at the same time, she kind of comments that, you know, that's kind of messed up that they've actually done this. They kind of manipulated these people so that if, you know, when they needed to, they would be able to exploit them. And that's kind of what they want to do with this chosen one figure that they're trying to create with this eugenics program that they have. Like I said, this is also like a political thriller, so there's a lot of like backstabbing and poisoning attempts and things like that. So this kind of like in a way breeds like a really great political thriller where you're not sure like who's on whose side, who's betraying who, and then when you do know who's betraying who, you're like in suspense because you're like, oh man, like this person's going to betray you, like you have to do something, but the person misses it for some reason, and you're just like, oh no, he's going to betray you. And it's really good. The politics of this world are written just as good as like the sci-fi elements of this world and the world building. There are points in the story where it does slow down a bit and kind of drags. Like the first book was great, the second book and the third book kind of start out slow and then pick up. The third book more so than the second one, so that was a bit of a hurdle kind of to get through. I mean, it's not a terrible slowdown of the book, but it kind of becomes involved with like the rituals of the Fremen and stuff like that, so it can slow down a bit, but then it does pick back up. One other thing that I thought this book kind of explored a bit was the idea of fate. So when Paul is back on the planet that they're leaving from to go to Arrakis, they basically told that, yeah, your Duke is walking in a trap and he can't escape it no matter what you do. So it's kind of like fate sets in and it's like set in like stone, and that like his father is going to die. It doesn't matter what he does. His father is going to die. But however, as when Paul kind of becomes more aware of his abilities, when he starts consuming this spice, he can see into the future. And while the future is in flux, there are certain points that he can't see past until he makes a decision, or certain decisions come into play. And so there, at the beginning, it's kind of saying like, yeah, like the future is set in stone. Like this is going to happen, and you can't do anything about it. We've seen it. It's going to happen. Nothing you can do about it. But then when Paul becomes like the chosen one, he can see the different choices and where they can go. But even though he can see it, the one thing that he does see in the future is like men fighting in his name for him, and like in a jihad crusade type situation. And he tries to avoid that, but in the end he sees that there's possibly no way to really stop it, and that there's nothing he can really do. The way things are set up, that almost everything he does, he becomes legend. So if Paul was somewhere, or Muad'Dib as they called him on the planet, Muad'Dib was somewhere, and like his bodyguards killed 6 people in front of him, the legend would go down that, you know, he killed 6 people. And it kind of works out that way, where it's kind of almost fated in the way that happened, no matter what he does, because he does try to pick choices where he can see it not happening, but it looks like it's going to happen anyway. So that was quite interesting to see how Frank Herbert explored like how fate plays in their lives as well. Overall, this was like a really good read. I really enjoyed it. I give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It is one of the best sci-fi novels that I've read, and I actually reread this book. I read this book a while ago, and I read this book. I've read, I think, the next 2 books in the series as well. I think there are like 7 of them in total. Children of Dune, and I forget what the other one's called, but it's been so long I don't remember the plots of those stories. But this was a really good read, and I recommend it to anyone who likes sci-fi or who like political thrillers. This one with like a sci-fi twist or like an underdog story. I think you will like this. So if you get a chance, go pick up Dune by Frank Herbert. So that's all I have to say for today. If you've read Dune, what were your thoughts on it? Please say in the comment section below. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more content from me, please subscribe. And I hope you're having a good day, a good week, and as always, keep reading.